I'm reading Psalms 133 from the New Revised Standard Version. How very good and pleasant it is when kindred live together in unity. It is like the precious oil on the head, running down on the beard of Aaron, running down over the collar of his robes. It is like the dew of Hermon, which falls on the mountains of Zion. For there the Lord ordained his blessing, life forevermore.
Thank you, David. Today, I want to just talk for a few moments from the topic, You Are in My System. You are in my system. You know, when it comes to music, most of us can recall what we listened to in our teenage and young adult years. And for me, those years included a very diverse, and in retrospect, I could say sometimes it's a kind of a strange mix of music. And my years of young adult years and late teenage years ran into those years of music called the 80s. 80s was when we had the advent of MTV. In the early 80s, that gave us access to some music that we might otherwise have missed. I ran into music by people such as Journey and Foreigner and Queen and Duran Duran and Michael Jackson and Prince and Lisa and Cult Jam. I was laughing because I still have a picture of myself. The largest picture I have of myself in my office is a picture of me sitting at a computer at work, and I had my Lisa hairstyle, you know, because I had to be cool. And at that time, that was Lisa's look was it. There were other groups that we listened to, like Rockwell. Somebody's watching me, and there was a group called The System, and The System had kind of like one song, and that really made the charts. And the name of that song was "You Are in My System." I thought about that song as I was preparing the message for today because, in a way, systems are what our text today is all about. The definition of a system is a set of things working together as parts of a mechanism or an interconnecting network. It's a harmonious arrangement or a pattern. And in order for systems to run smoothly, all of the components need to do their part to satisfy the intended outcome. Even the smallest component can cause a system not to function. I'm reminded of the days when I had my huge 1974 Chevrolet Impala. It was given to me by my father. It had one of those beautiful 350 V8 engines. That car weighed over 4,300 pounds, but there was a little component that sometimes needed to be changed and kept the car going. And that component only weighed a few ounces. You don't know about them too much in cars these days, but we used to have to change our spark plugs. And if that spark plug was not there to provide the spark to ignite the gasoline in the combustion chamber, the car was not going to go anywhere. A $4,000 car could not move because of a 2 to 3 ounce spark plug. That's how systems are in general. One defective component, no matter how small, can ruin the functioning of the whole system. And there are all kinds of systems. It could be something physical like a car or a computer, or it could be something more organic like our bodies, or it could be an entity, something we're a part of like an organization, a church, or even a family. Family systems are much of what our text for today is about. Our text comes out of the book of Psalms. It's Psalm 133. If you look at a Bible, you'll probably see a heading over that psalm that says a song of ascents, a song of ascents. This particular psalm was part of this group of psalms called Song of Ascent Psalms. Those were Psalm 120 through Psalm 134. Ascent is a noun, and from the Hebrew word, the root of the word means to go up. It was decreed that the various tribes of Israel, would go up to Jerusalem for Passover and various other festivals and celebrations. It's believed that Psalm 133 and the other ascent psalms were used as short poems that could be memorized and recited by the groups of travelers while they were on their way. I don't know why I keep thinking of the song 100 Bottles of Beer on the Wall, but you know how it is. We're in the car, we're trying to do something, we're trying to keep our mind off of the travel, but we know we have to keep going, but we use something else to keep our mind off of the grueling ride, or in their case, the grueling walk to Jerusalem. They needed something they could sing or they could chant together to pass the time on the trip. So they had these short ascent psalms, of which Psalm 133 was one of them. The significance of our text is that it uses the imagery of family. It presents family unity as something to be celebrated. It says it is like the precious oil on the head running down upon the beard, on the beard of Aaron, running down over the collar of his robes. That sounds kind of strange, but there are two possible ways to interpret that statement. Pouring oil over the head seems to have been an act of hospitality, signaling joy and relatedness, as well as an official act of consecrating kings and priests. That's why the naming of Aaron is so significant, because Aaron was a priest. Oil also was a scarce and precious commodity, usually used only for essentials of life, like light and heating. But on festive occasions, it could be showered on in extravagant ways as a sign of well-being. So the message was that this communal harmony was a cause for celebration, signifying that the community was at peace and that the community had more than enough. And then the text says, it's like the dew of Hermon, which falls upon the mountains of Zion, for the Lord ordained his blessing, life evermore. It's thought that this was a pre-existing song it meant that dew was falling on an arid place, which would be a cause for celebration for anybody if you don't usually have rain or you don't usually have dew. But then later, there was a reference to Zion that was added to that early song. And it was used to maybe celebrate that the people from the northern kingdom were flowing down upon Zion, which was the center of the southern kingdom. When you put these all together, these three verses celebrate the blessing of coming together in unity. That would have been especially important for people to fix their minds to as they were on their way to celebrate festivals with people from various tribes, which meant these were people from various locations, people with various beliefs, people with various customs, but they all needed to come together as one huge family unit. So this was not just a message about individual families. It was a message for God's people as a whole. It meant make sure that what you're bringing to the party or to the system is something that helps things go well and doesn't cause it to break down. That's an assessment we could all ask ourselves from time to time. In the systems that we're a part of, what kind of component am I? What kind of component are we being? What kind of impact are we having on the whole? Returning to the automobile analogy, most cars need a battery to run. But even if you get a brand new battery, if you have a defective alternator, that powerful battery you bought is just going to drain down to nothing and your car eventually won't run. You know, people are like that sometimes. Have you ever been a part of an organization or a family where everything's going great, everyone's getting along, everybody's being productive, until that one person comes in that seems to suck the life out of everything, just seems to take all of the joy out of the room as soon as they open the door? Or maybe where that one person comes in the room who loves to argue. I'm not referring to constructively presenting a difference of opinion. I'm talking about being disruptive or destructive for no apparent good reason. Most of us have experienced these things. At times, we've been the ones who disrupted the system. One of the most interesting concepts in marriage and family therapy is family systems theory. That means whatever affects one affects each one in the system. Many, if not most of us, label people perhaps a bit too quickly and too harshly. For example, say a child keeps getting into trouble in school and nobody at the school can figure out why. Even the parents have a problem figuring out why. But if there was someone who studied that family and took an objective view, maybe they'd notice that each time that kid gets in trouble, their parent comes to school to take them home. The parent might label the kid as a problem, but when you observe the family, in fact, you see that the child is really a symptom of a larger issue. Perhaps the only time the parents take time out to give the child any attention is when that child gets into trouble. The child is not defective. There's someone else in the system who is the source of the malfunction. What happens in that case is everybody needs to consider their contribution to the whole, to see what they can change in order to make the family function in a more healthy way. We are all components of some sort of system, but we don't always deal with each other in the most productive of ways. Many times there's conflict between us and between us and the rest of the system. And you remember, even two people can be a system. I read somewhere that when it comes to conflict, the most overused word is you. Y-O-U, you. We turn against each other and we create more negativity using that small word, you. You did this. You didn't do that. You always, or you every time you. Instead of looking inside and seeing what's going on inside of us. And if we're not in conflict, sometimes we respond to others. If there's a problem, we respond with distance. Don't speak to me. I'm not going to speak to him. But I read somewhere that something that said, and it made a lot of sense to me. It said distant persons think about each other, the relationship and the conflict that led to it a great deal. By distancing, they are far from free from the problem. They're still emotionally bound and defined by it. Conflict and distance are both symptoms of a system that needs repair. Most people are not inherently evil in most cases, and the other person in a conflict is not completely wrong. A lot of times there's just a glitch in the system. We're all part of some sort of system that could function better. It could be in our relationships. It could be in an organization. It could be in the workplace. It could be our extended family or our community. And God knows it could be our country. But how can we move forward in these systems in a more healthy and more productive place of unity? Optimum performance for any system requires troubleshooting sometime and identifying the underperforming component. And then we have to decide if we're going to repair or replace that underperforming component. We need to do some examination, some troubleshooting in our life sometime, and maybe we could do that. We could ask ourselves, what areas of our life seem to have some challenges that cause some level of disharmony? In those situations or systems, we need to ask, what kind of component am I being in this system that we call life, or the system we call family, or the system we call community? What kind of component am I being? Am I a well-functioning component, or am I a dysfunctional component? What am I bringing to the system? And then we need to ask, well, what do I want to be? How can I be more effective in this system? How can I be more loving, more kind, more helpful, more supportive? How can I be more of a change, a positive change agent in this system? How do we do that? first thing we have to do is some critical self-reflection, not taking on guilt, but learning to be compassionately honest with ourselves first and then with others. Secondly, we need to have at least one person we respect that loves us enough to tell us the truth. And we need to be willing to listen to that person. Or we need to own our responsibility and make a commitment to be the best component in the greater good that we can be. And we can find a point of commonality and shared purpose with those who are around us. That will help us to function more effectively in a system. And finally, we can recognize that we're part of a much larger system called creation, and that we're unconditionally loved by the Creator. Alice Walker said, "It just seems clear to me that as long as we are all here, it's pretty clear that the struggle is to share the planet rather than divide it." We can learn from the tribes going up to Jerusalem. We can learn how it is to come together from various corners with various viewpoints and be able to live together in harmony. As the text says, how very good and pleasant it is when kindred live together in harmony, in unity. Martin Luther King Jr. said, we must learn to live together as kindred. He said brothers, but I say kindred, or perish together as fools. The point is not to homogenize, but it is to recognize that we're all made of the same substance in different hues, and hopefully headed to the same place, just as the pilgrims in the text were headed to a place of recognition and celebration of the many ways that God had blessed them. John F. Kennedy said, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future. We are all mortal. We've already been blessed, my friends, because we're all here. Now our task is to work towards making the systems we're all a part of operate optimally for all people and for the rest of creation, not just people, but we're stewards of the rest of creation. So we're here to make sure it all runs smoothly. I know that sounds like an unrealistic hope, but I'm reminded of an old Ethiopian proverb that said, when spiders unite, they can tie down a lion. I'm glad today because you are in my system. So let's make this system run smoothly for everybody. Thank you for listening.